Hey everybody, welcome back to Foil Fridays. This is Tucker from Mac Kiteboarding. We got a new present, new toy from Slingshot. We have the new Slingwing V2 for foil winging, foil surfing, whatever you want to call it. And got out just yesterday to give this a shot. Got it pumped up here in our backyard, in my backyard I should say, on quarantine this spring. So no better time than to test some new gear, and Slingshot was nice enough to send me a factory sample of their new V2 Slingwing. So got out and tested it, took a look at it, got some fun things going, and I'll give you a quick overview and my first impressions. Alright, so starting with the basics, they've got more sizes this year, which is really important. You got different size people, different kinds of winds, different riding styles, so you need different size wings. Right here I have a 5.4. For me at 200 pounds, that's kind of my bread and butter wing. It covers me in about 16 to 17 knots, all the way up to probably the early 30s, kind of just depending on what board, what foil, what the conditions are doing. So lots of range, and this is definitely the one I would pick if I had to choose just one for my quiver. Some interesting things going on that we can see from this view. We have a kind of medium aspect on the 5.4. They do have a consistent wind range, or wingspan, I should say, consistent wingspan across all the sizes. So the smaller you get, the higher aspect the foils or the wing is going to get. The bigger you get, the lower aspect it's going to get, and I think that's brilliant. For the higher wind designs, the smaller kites, you want a higher aspect because you were dealing with higher speeds. You're looking for more efficiency upwind in those kind of conditions because you're probably dealing with a lot of downwind current and such, and you're really not that worried about the wingspan at that point because they're really not that big. On the other hand, if you had a big wing with a massive wingspan because it's high aspect, that's really going to be hard to handle, and you're going to lose some of that low end grunt until you build that point of momentum, until you build that apparent wind from your board speed. So it's really nice in those lighter conditions to have lower aspect, more grunt, and yes, it reduces your speed range a little bit, but you're not going all that fast in those kind of conditions anyway, so you're really not going to need all that extra apparent wind power. The sail itself is going to create plenty of power once you get moving. Another thing you can see, beautiful graphics. I mean, they really did a great job with this thing. We have 4x4 canopy ripstop, so you really can't see it well from this view, I suppose. Let's see if I can give you guys a better look at it in the sunlight. So that means we have 4 strands of support coming from both directions on the canopy, making it the most durable canopy on the market. Especially important for wing surfing because these things get bounced off of you, they get bounced off your board, sometimes even your foil. They get rolled through the surf. You want a really tough canopy to make sure that you're not getting repairs all the time, but also just to extend the life of your wing. The stiffer the canopy is, the longer it's going to hold its intended shape, and the better it's going to perform in the long run. So it's really important to have a super stiff, durable canopy when wing foiling, and they did a great job with the 4x4 ripstop, and somehow ended up still having a super light wing here. So that's pretty amazing. Looking around to the corner here, you can see through my wet, sandy kite that I'm drying off here that we have some really good reinforcement bumpers here, some really good wear patches that are going to keep the wing from sustaining any small cuts in the Dacron leading edge, and those go all the way from the corner all the way to the wingtip in one continuous piece, so you are not having gaps in that. Some brands will do little bumpers and stuff, and those are great too, but having a continuous piece is really cool. because that way if you manage to hit a stick or a sharp shell in one of those spots where there's not a bumper, as we all know, oftentimes our beaches aren't level ground, so that is possible, and that will allow you to reduce that damage. I think that's about all we can look at on this side. This is the green colorway. They'll also have an orange colorway for us here that I do not have an example of. So let's flip this around and see what else we can talk about. Won't talk about that leash because this is a factory sample. They didn't send me a leash or a backpack with it, so I can't comment on that at this point. Based on their renderings, looks like a waist leash. Looks like a great waist leash. Haven't tested it, so can't really comment on it, but Slingshot has a history of making phenomenal products, so we'll just trust them that they can make a leash. Same for the backpack. It looks like a great design. Backpack, you know, it's kind of a backpack, but I'm sure it's great from Slingshot, durable, and sufficient for holding the wing when it's not inflated. So on this end, we've got a lot more stuff going on, a lot more exciting things we can talk about. So let's take a quick peek at some of the features on this side of the canopy. I'll start with these battens, we'll call them. These are sewn in, they're not removable, and they are made of a durable, flexible plastic. These are not fiberglass or carbon battens that are going to break or puncture your canopy and need replacing constantly. You can bend these, fold these, and they're going to continue to do their job. You might ask why those are there, why even bother put them on the canopy. Well, depending on the design is going to change the answer to that. Some should have them, some should not, but generally those are put in there to reinforce the canopy in those sections, to reduce flutter and really hold the optimum canopy shape through the whole foil. And what that means for you is just a more efficient, you gain a more efficient wing. You gain a little bit more power when you get the proper airfoil shape. You also gain a little bit better top speed, and you won't hear as much crinkling and shuddering through the wind in your ears, so that's always a bonus as well. So that's kind of a cool way that Slingshot did that. You can still fold this thing up however you'd like, smash it down, vacuum bag it for your trip, and not have to worry about damaging the battens or having to constantly replace them if you get tumbled through the waves. So that's real cool. Going to the handles, obviously this is your interface with your wing. It's really important. Lots of different ways to do this. Different brands are doing it different ways. And honestly, I think Slingshot really nailed it with the second version of their wing. Some would say Slingshot kind of invented this Y handle or Y strap, being that they've had it in their lineup for a long time, and Tony has it in a lot of his early prototypes. That transfers over to V2. We really love the Y strap for a few reasons. Number one, it gives you a great cross brace to your leading edge. It really helps support, you know, that geometry between the boom and the leading edge, and stiffens up this connection so that there's no warping. You know, if you just have this small connection here, you know, you might have a little bit of twisting or bending, but these really help reinforce that connection. Secondly, when you hold it here and a back handle like that, especially in gusty winds, it helps reduce the roll or the twist of the wing. And that is a common thing, especially in gusty winds or higher winds. You know, you get different amounts of wind in other sides of the canopy, and it can cause it to twist. Obviously, if you're hanging on right dead center on a handle, there's not a lot of control over that. So if you get some leverage over it here, I like to hold it on the skyward side, I should say, of the wing. That really gives you a little bit more leverage over that and control of the wing and how it's reacting, which just means you have, you know, more confidence. It makes your life a lot easier. And you know, even if your body is blocking the lower half of the wing and you're getting more wind into the canopy in the top half, you still have a good control over that without it flipping back and forth uncontrollably, which is really cool. Leading edge handle, kind of, you know, same for most brands. It does what it does. You hang on to that when you're luffing the sail. When you're surfing, it kind of holds it in place. One thing that's neat that they do have is a patch for your fingers, because this thing's bouncing a little bit and you're doing this, and over time, if your fingers are on the Dacron, your knuckles especially on this Dacron, it'll wear them down. You'll actually have raw knuckles. And I've seen it on people that are doing long downwinders or riding a lot of waves using that, wear their knuckles down. That wear patch reduces that. It's made of a nice nylon material rather than the Dacron that's going to eat up your knuckles. Moving down, you have a secondary handle, almost looks like a secondary luff handle, and that one is used as a transition point between the leading edge and your normal riding handles. Now, I think this one also works pretty good when you're surfing and you're in some lighter winds where maybe you want to hold a little bit of power in the canopy just so that it continues to fall downwind of you. If you don't have power in the canopy at all, especially on a light wind day and you're heading straight downwind on foil, the wing will have a tendency to fall in front of you. If you hold it on this one, there's just enough canopy into the wind and it should keep it upwards and flying. At least in my experience, it works really well. It's also a great transition point going from here. So when you're grabbing it from the top end, I'll show you actually how. So if you're starting from the water and you're going from here to here, it's a lot easier to hold your hand like that than it is to try to go vertical and grab it here like that. So it's a real handy handle, and if you find your front arm is getting a little tired, you can even grab it with that, and it's a different grab position than here. You can grab it that way, you can grab it that way, or you can do that. So it works really good. And in high powered conditions, I even like to grab this one along with the front handle just for a little less power. You know, if I pull in a little bit and lean on it, it's not going to have so much tendency to become overpowered or drag me downwind. So that's a cool feature for that high wind riding. And just a transition point, they call it a transition handle between those. Got a cool eagle, a couple of eagles falling up home here. Pretty cool stuff. Anyway, moving on. Front handle, it is what it is. It's simple. This is a great spot to grab with your front hand aside from your Y straps, and that really allows you to balance the power well between your front and back hands. And then depending on your shoulder width as well as what kind of wind you're dealing with, how powered up you are, you may grab this handle, or this handle. Personally, I'm 6'3". I have, you know, normal broad shoulders for a taller person, so I tend to grab the middle handle. But sometimes this handle as well if I'm riding overpowered and don't need that much power. So it's a little bit narrower grab, and I don't accidentally overpower it leaning in hard, driving upwind. One thing actually I forgot to mention about the Y-strap handle, which is probably one of the more important things as maybe a new rider. Transitioning between Y-strap handles is really nice. Rather than having a front handle, you're going to grab the same front handle generally, whether you're riding left or right. You know, you're kind of balancing the same amount of power. So, you know, you generally give your hang onto the same handle, and then you transition. Let's see if I can give you a good view of this. Transition between hands, and you're kind of juggling which hand goes where and overlapping fingertips. It's really not a perfect way to do it. You're kind of trying to juggle between this one handle. So if you're riding with this one going this direction and then you transition, it's very simple to grab the other handle, you know, for going from one hand to the other, so that you're not grabbing and trying to share the same handle with two hands. You know, maybe that seems trivial, but it does make it that much easier. You know, the Y strap is directly adjacent to the Y strap on the other side, so finding it without looking is really easy. It's really intuitive, and you know, even if you're transitioning upwind, finding it above your head with your other hand without looking is a really nice feature to have, and it's something that I've really enjoyed about the Y straps. It's those small details that can help you make those transitions, you know, 90% of the time rather than 50% of the time. It's all those small changes that can really help you with that. So anyway, moving down between the handles, you might see these red pigtails. These are for harness lines. So when you're riding upwind, or maybe you want to give your arms a break, you can strap a rope of Dyneema between these two and hook into a kiteboarding or windsurfing harness and use that to take the load off of your arms, lean into your harness, And that really helps take the load off, helps you drive upwind more efficiently, because you can twist your arms and lean in rather than trying to hold them out here and position the wing in a certain way. It's really great. I love doing it in flat water when I'm driving upwind. In the waves, you know, I tend to really not use a harness. I tend to not use a harness line in the waves that much unless I'm really, you know, trying to stay in the same spot and having a hard time because of a downwind current or something like that. But in flat water, or if I'm doing long reaches, you know, just trying to stay in the same spot upwind, or if I'm taking a really long session, you know, I'll use a harness with it just to give my arms a break. And you know, it's probably not something that you want to do as a beginner. You know, get your feet wet, learn the basics first, and then, you know, give that a test in some lighter winds and kind of progress up into higher winds. Because obviously when you're hooked in, if you get gusted or you fall off your board, now you're headed into your canopy, you're headed into your boom. And that can hurt, you know, falling in that way, but also could damage, you know, your equipment if you go through it or into it, especially with your harness hook. So yeah, maybe save that after you get the basics down. Going into the inflation system, I know, pumping up, not super exciting, but having it wrong can definitely make your life a pain in the neck. So we'll take a peek at that. Slingshot has their classic one pump. You pump up the leading edge, it pumps up the boom as well, one spot. It's got a nice Boston valve, which are incredibly reliable. You can find this replacement part from a number of different brands, and it's available at most shops for kiteboarding. So that's real handy. You do have a lock-off valve for your strut. So if you're wrapping it up for the day and you want to leave the boom inflated, you can do that. If you want to patch a hole in your bladder and you need to isolate which bladder it's in, that can be handy for that as well. Going around to this side, you don't necessarily need a dump valve for a Boston system, but they gave us one anyway. So this one can be used to rapidly deflate the kite, and it's actually kind of handy. I've grown to really enjoy it because it's easier to dump here and then plug it and pump it than it is just to, you know, do the whole Boston valve, you know, deflate here and, you know, re-screw it in every single time. So, you know, just pop this, deflate it for most of the time. That's going to work great. If you really want to deflate quickly or evacuate all the air for traveling or something, pull both of those and you can really squeeze the most air out in no time. And you know what, I forgot to mention one thing about the shape of this wing. We mentioned about the aspect ratios and the wingspan, and the 5.4. This is a great wingspan, I feel like, for something that's almost 5.5 meters. You know, it's a very manageable size. The shape of this, you know, that kind of dihedral design, is really well balanced. It's easy to flip over, but it's still, you know, got enough wingspan to really catch lighter winds and get rolling. The thing I didn't mention about the shape is the way the boom comes all the way back like this. You'll notice it's almost got like kind of a bat wing flavor on the trailing edge there, where the boom tip is further down than the wingtips. Now that's really important when you're starting out of the water, because the boom can sit in the water a little bit, but keep the wingtips out of the water. And for the most part, that keeps water from flooding your canopy and creating a sea anchor, which is especially important in smaller boards if you're doing sinker starts, anything like that, because you want to be able to tip that boom into the air without flooding the canopy. Because if you flood the canopy, it's game over. You're going to run into your kite, and you know, you just kind of got to restart and try again. But the shape of this being dihedral with that extended boom really helps out with that. Additionally, you know, I do think you could really, you know, attribute maybe some of the special sauce of this wing, which I'm really impressed by, to this panel here. So if you take a peek at the shape of that and how it forms the airfoil coming off the leading edge, you know, really that's setting the shape of the wing. In the really meaty part of the wing right there, it's important to have a deep canopy to create that airfoil section to generate the most power as you can for the wing size. And they really nailed it. I mean, you can see this is pretty big. I mean, that's probably 12 inches there. of foil section, and then it tapers off really nicely to keep it nice and efficient and powerful. So that's something I've really noticed I like about a lot of wings that I fly, especially if I'm looking for more power per size, which is always a nice thing. You can size down if you have that and have that extra bit of juice in the canopy. So they really nailed that. Anyway, I've gone on and on about this thing and the technical details, but where the rubber meets the road is how it rides. I've only got, maybe a couple of sessions in this now, but I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm not ready to say it's my favorite wing of all time yet, but it's certainly in competition for my favorite wing of all time. And more sessions, in some varied conditions will definitely tell me that. And of course, with any wing, there's a certain amount of just getting used to something that's new and getting to know it. But something tells me this is going to be my favorite wing in 2021, at least for a lot of different conditions, because thus far I've really been impressed by it. It's very intuitive. I could jump right in it and feel at home for the most part. So really excited to see how this progresses for me. And yeah, just really enjoying it. Excited to try out some more of the other sizes, maybe that 6.4 for some super light winds, or even one of the 3 or 4s for a little bit beefier day. Get out there in 35 knots or something and take on a nice big downwinder on the lake. So that's it. Just a brief run through some of the cool technical details of this, and I'll get some more info for you as we have it. As always, feel free to pick up the phone and call us, jump on our live chat, or send an email if you have any questions. We do personal recommendations every single day. We're really experienced here at the shop and can, just meet you at where you're at and tell you, where you need to be for your next bit of gear that's going to do what you need it to or help you take it to the next level. Got a lot of different wing equipment this year, and a lot of it's not even making it up onto the website immediately because we're so busy. But yeah, feel free to pick up the phone and give us a ring. As always, thanks for dropping by. Give us a thumbs up if you appreciate the video. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more of our content, and share with a friend. As always, this has been Tucker with Matt Kiteboarding, and you have a good day.